there. Welcome to another episode of From Ireland to Palestine. We're here today with Yousef Aljamal. He's a writer and editor. He was a student and a close friend, I think, of Rifat Al-Arir, who's famous for his poem If I Must Die, and was, of course, murdered by Israel. He's also works for the American Friends Service Committee, the Quaker charitable organisation, and he's here in Belfast just telling people about the book he did with Rifat, a collection of those poems, and another book called Displaced in Gaza, which tells stories about people who were displaced as part of the Gaza genocide. So, Yousef, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, I mean, I know you're giving various talks and talking to various people. I was at the one you were giving last night, which was very interesting. And there were so many sort of interesting stories from that. I thought I might, if you don't mind, just actually get you to go over one or two again. I mean, it was interesting hearing that you grew up in Nusrat refugee camp, which, of course, I've heard of, but I didn't know it was built on the site of a former British prison. I mean, was the prison still actually physically there? Was it visible when you were growing up?
So, Nusayrat itself was not built on what used to be a prison. My particular refugee community is called Block A, so it's a part of the refugee
part
camp.
Of the refugee camp, yeah.
And this is where I grew up. And the gate in and out of the refugee community is the actual gate of the prison. It's still there.
Still there, yeah.
Reminder and of a reality that existed before.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the only way to get in and out of my refugee community up until today. There is no other way.
Mm-hmm.
And in the first Palestinian Intifada in the 80s, Israeli patrol units would have armed-to-teeth soldiers there checking people coming in and out and humiliating them, including my father, who was coming back from work in Israel one day, and he was asked to dance to entertain soldiers. And that was their way of humiliating him in front of his neighbors who were on the other side of the road. And he had no other choice but to accept their offer, not even offer. Demand.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way. Yeah. And but he was smart enough to ask them to clap for him so that he could dance. And once they started doing so, they put their guns aside, and he picked up his slippers and he ran away. And he hid in a nearby orange grove. But he was able to go back, and then his parents were worried about his fate, and he hid on the top of a high tree until it was sunset time. My grandparents were worried about his fate, and they were told that he was captured and killed and injured and all of these things. So only until it became sunset time that he was able to go to a nearby mosque, making use of his beautiful voice, and he made the call for prayer. This is how he communicated with his parents. I always tell this story to explain the intergenerational trauma of living under military occupation. So it started with my grandfather becoming a refugee in Gaza in 1948 after he was expelled from his village, and after his father was killed at the hands of Zionist militias who invaded the village and destroyed it. And my father lived his entire life as a refugee in Gaza. My father also was born in a refugee camp, and he died in a refugee camp in 2024 because of the genocide. And it's again happening to my generation. My nephews and nieces now are experiencing a genocide in the same refugee camp. So we're talking about multiple generations who have suffered because of Israel's establishment and the ongoing Nakba that started in 1948 and never stopped.
And your father, he was a laborer in
Yes.
Israel, was that right? Yeah.
Yeah, he worked in Israel for a long time, and he was coming back from work, and he lost his life because of the lack of medication during the genocide in May 2024.
Yeah. And your sister, I think you're old. I was watching an interview you did about a decade ago, and you were talking about how your oldest sister.
Yeah, this was even before the
genocide.
the genocide. I lost my brother and sister to Israel's occupation, and my sister was prevented from traveling outside Gaza to receive medical attention, which was not available in Gaza due to the siege, and she lost her life. She was 26 at the time. This was 2007. My brother was also killed in 2004. So it's an endless cycle of violence and killing and displacement that our people have been going through. I've lost a total of 16 direct family members during the genocide that started in Gaza in October 2023, including 4 of my siblings and 6 of their children and 5 of their spouses, so and my father as well. So it's been very tough for my family, but my family is not an exception. This is the situation of almost every single family in Gaza. This is a story of loss and displacement and dehumanization and starvation that's still going on as we talk. Yesterday, Israel killed 8 Palestinians in Gaza and injured 29. So we have no ceasefire even up until now. The world speaks of a ceasefire, but the reality is totally different. We have about 760 Palestinians who have been killed by Israel in Gaza since October 2025.
Yeah.
So it's one-sided ceasefire. Rifat would always repeat that Palestinians seize and Israel fires. This is the definition of ceasefire in Gaza.
Yeah. I didn't actually, we use that phrase all the time as well. I didn't realize that Rifat was the one who came up with it or at least used it frequently, but yeah, that's exactly the case. And I think you were just 15 when your brother was killed.
Yes.
Does it mean and you're young when your sister died as well from lack of medication? Does that prepare you in any way for like what happened during the genocide? Growing up with that kind of trauma?
I mean, the genocide is the most extreme form of killing and destruction. But we have had bits of genocide in the past. Military siege is not fun. And we've been living under military siege and surveillance for more than 17 years before October 7 happened.
Yeah.
Killings and, drones hovering around, the lack of privacy, inability to travel in and out of Gaza, the closure of commercial crossings connecting Gaza with the outside world by Israel, calculating the number of calories Palestinians could have by Israeli military officers. And this is all documented. So our life was never normal in Gaza.
Yeah.
And over the years, we lost many friends and family and neighbors. Many people lost their scholarships because they didn't have the chance to travel in time to go to their schools outside Gaza. Many people lost their lives because they didn't have the medical permit to have a surgery outside Gaza by Israel, especially cancer patients. So I mentioned my sister, but my sister was one of at least 800 people who lost their lives from 2007 to 2012 because of Israel's policy of collective punishment by the use of this regime of permits that allow people to go out Gaza or outside Gaza to have treatment, and sometimes they would blackmail them into collaboration with Israel, especially cancer patients. They would give them a permit to have the first chemotherapy session, but not a permit to have the second one. So that October 7 was exceptional. I mean, the genocide in Gaza was brutal in many different ways, in many exceptional ways, but it wasn't totally strange from us. We've seen it in different ways that were much less intense. So we always had houses in Gaza being demolished by Israel, airstrikes, surveillance, drones, shootings, incursions. Israel would shoot at farmers, at fishermen at the sea. They're not allowed most of the time to fish beyond 3 nautical miles. Many of them were injured and killed and captured by Israel. And Israel would attack Palestinians from time to time. We would have escalations that kill hundreds of Palestinians. But it has never been this intense. It has never been this brutal.
Yeah, no, it goes way beyond even like the worst things in 2014, like the level of viciousness then. So you obviously knew exactly what the nature of Israel Your father, what did he learn about Israel from working there? What did he learn about the nature of Israeli society?
So my father was a political person, but he learned Hebrew. He spoke Hebrew fluently. And you do not have to live in Israel or work in Israel to learn about Israel.
Yeah.
It's enough if you live in Gaza. It's a concentration camp that was turned into an extermination camp. His grandfather was killed by Israel. His son was killed by Israel, and his daughter was prevented from having a surgery that led to her death. And this is all by Israel.
Yeah.
My father also lived in Gaza. I've seen the airstrikes and the incursions, and he grew up in a refugee camp in very miserable conditions. So I've seen the impact of Israel. He lived it. He suffered from it multiple times. The separation between Gaza and the West Bank. He was in the West Bank for 5 years, not being able to return to Gaza, because if he did, he would lose his job, and then he wouldn't be able to go back again. This happened from 1998 to 2003. He was away from the family for 5 years so that he could work in the West Bank. So there are many reminders in Gaza, the military occupation, that reminded my dad and my family of this brutality.
Yeah, so I was well aware of it. I want to ask you about, you were saying there about how cancer patients are almost blackmailed by Israel into collaboration. I remember Mohammed Shahada speaking about that and how people actually become suspicious of like cancer patients, so they have that on top of the stress of being ill. Then maybe people are suspicious of them. They're wondering, did they collaborate with Israel? Did they not? That's a horrendous sort of thing to have on top of an already.
Yeah, I mean, Israel doesn't, implement its policy randomly.
Yeah.
They understand the implications of every step, every decision they make. If you look at the genocide in Gaza and the reason they, for example, banned cigarettes, it wasn't random. That was part and parcel of their engineering of the genocide, because they know that withdrawal will have an impact on the society. People who are addicted to cigarettes, and there are many of them in Gaza, especially many people are jobless, will suffer from withdrawal consequences, and this resulted in more domestic violence, theft that we've seen in Gaza. In fact, Israeli quadcopters would drop leaflets with 2 cigarettes, telling people this is the price of cigarettes before October 7 was only 1.5 Israeli shekels. Now it's 150.
Yeah.
Do you want to have cigarettes back? Call us at this number. And they did this multiple times. I've seen it. I have seen this.
Was that a way to get people to collaborate?
Yes, of course. But again, they're not random. And when they give someone a permit, and they know what people are going to think about this person, because there are people who were denied a permit, and people start asking, like, why was this person
Why did they get it?
given a permit and not the other person? Sometimes it's within the same family. So they create suspicion within the family itself, within the society at large. And I mean, this has been their policy for many years. My mom is from the West Bank, and it took her 12 years to get an Israeli permit to visit her own family. So from 2000 to 2012, she was denied a permit for no reason.
Yeah.
And only after I started writing about her case, and I spoke to an Israeli human rights organization called Gisha, they took her case to the Israeli Supreme Court, that she was given a permit, a 4-day permit to see her family. Even when her parents passed away in 2008, 2003, she was not given a permit to participate in the funeral procession. So it's all intentional and planned and calculated and engineered.
Yes, a constant, sort of petty infringements on people's basic lives to make them suffer in any way they can and breed division and suspicion. Yeah. And you were saying there about the number of people killed directly, possibly hundreds or maybe 1,000 killed directly from lack of medication. Probably the total is far more than that, because in Britain, I think there's been studies done calculating that the effect of austerity policies killed potentially hundreds of thousands of people in the 10 years post 2010, and that's without a massive siege and blockade. So you can imagine it's similar.
If you look
per
at the
capita.
statistics today in Gaza, we're talking about 70,000 people, 72,000 people who have lost their lives directly because of the genocide. But we have also tens of thousands of people like my dad who lost their lives because of the lack of medication. There are about 23,000 injured Palestinians who need immediate evacuation. Israel allowed only 2,700 of them to leave Gaza so far since October 2025. So the situation is catastrophic, and the number of people losing their lives indirectly because of the genocide is very high. We have about 9,000 people who are still under the rubble of their homes. We have about 3,000 people who are missing. You do not know their fate, whether they're in Israeli jail or they were killed, and their bodies became, food for animals like dogs. I've seen many, skeletons and remains of people, and they will stay, unknown for forever. You cannot tell. So there are many families that are still waiting answers. Yesterday, Israel released about 14 Palestinian prisoners from their jails into Gaza. And I've seen photos of families receiving their loved ones, but also I've seen photos of families carrying photos of their loved ones and asking them if they've seen them in Israeli jails, because there is no transparency about
Who's in the jails?
prisons and who's in prison and how many and etc. Especially now, the conditions in Israeli jails are horrible under Ben Gvir, who recently celebrated the introduction or the passing of the death penalty law with a champagne in the Israeli Knesset. So this is the kind of minister who's in charge of Israeli jails. We have dozens of Palestinians who lost their lives in Israeli jails during the genocide due to torture. And this is something, is very important. And tomorrow is April 17, Prisoners' Day. In Palestine. It marks the day the first Palestinian prisoner was released from Israeli jails, and I think in 1973 or 74. And it's very important for the Palestinian people. This issue is major, and it impacts every single family. There are three people in my extended family who are in Israeli jails, and different people who served sentences in Israeli jail. So it impacts every Palestinian house. And
some huge percentage of Palestinian men have served.
About 1 million Palestinians have been arrested by Israel since 1967. And this is a big number if you look at the population of Gaza and the West Bank today.
It's a huge percentage. Yeah. I think, did you... about a decade ago, did you translate a book about Palestinian prisoners?
I worked on 3 books on Palestinian prisoners. The first one came out in 2013, titled The Prisoner's Diaries. It was interviews with Palestinian political prisoners who were released from Israeli jails as part of the Shalit deal then. And this book was also translated into other languages later. And in 2016, I worked on another book on Palestinian child prisoners. Again, it speaks of Palestinian child prisoners detained by Israel as young as 4 and 6 years old, and the fact that they're tried before military courts, unlike their Israeli counterparts who live in the same areas in the West Bank.
Civil courts.
Their age is defined differently by Israeli courts, where Palestinian children are those who are considered by courts as those who are below the age of 18. 16 Israeli kids are defined as those who are under the age of 18. So, and they live in the same area, but they have 2 different legal systems. And 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I worked with Danny Morrison here in Belfast, with Palestinian lecturer Asad Abu Sharh and Norma Hashim, my friend Norma Hashim, who also worked on all these books on prisoners with me before. We worked on a book on Palestinian and Irish hunger strikers. So we shared their stories and they felt very similar. And we thought that it's important that we publish them together.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap. There's very high rates, I don't think this is publicised enough, but there's very high rates of sexual abuse of children, isn't there, in Israeli prisons? Like needless strip searches, like some huge, like 60% plus prisoners are strip searched.
This is very common, especially after October 7. I interviewed a Palestinian prisoner who was released from the notorious City Man detention center in the Naqab desert. And his name was Ibrahim Salim. He's the brother of a friend of mine. And his photo was leaked by CNN, I believe. It went viral because of the horrible conditions these prisoners were subjected to. Although his face was blurred, his family was able to identify him, using certain things that they knew about him, certain marks. And he was released after 8 months in City Ban. He was never charged. He was tortured. He was raped. And this happened to many prisoners there. And again, what happened when the video of Israeli soldiers and officers raping Palestinian prisoners was leaked, these officers were celebrated in the Israeli society. Ben Gvir went and honored them. So instead of punishing them, they were honored. And I mean, Ben Gvir is not so much different from them. If we look at his own history, he was convicted by Israeli courts. He has a criminal record, but now he's running a very critical ministry in Israel.
Yeah. And he had members of Knesset basically defending the right to rape Palestinian prisoners. Yeah. Just moving on, wanted to talk about your relationship with Rifat El-Arir, who you edited this book of, which is sitting on the table here. You had some interesting stories last night about him as well, just how demanding he was as a teacher, and how he was pushing everyone to sort of be the best, like the best version of themselves. Could you speak a bit about that, what he was like as a person and as a teacher?
Yeah, so I met him in 2007. I joined the English language department, and he just returned back from overseas, from UCL, after obtaining his master's in comparative literature. He was very serious about his job and his mission. He was very intentional. He was global in his teachings. So although we lived under siege in Gaza, we were able to be in different countries and different contexts because of the books he introduced. And we've seen the world through pages and authors, a word that was inaccessible to us in many different ways because of the Israeli siege. We got to study Irish, English, American, Italian, Brazilian, even Japanese literature. So Rifat was global in many different ways. We got to know about the revolutionaries. He was very intentional when it came to the texts he introduced that had a political message. It wasn't just like a random, literature text. And he believed in the power of literature and storytelling in changing hearts and minds and telling the story of Palestine and changing the narrative on Palestine. So he always encouraged his students to write their own stories. He would tell them, publish or perish. He would remind them that their experience in Gaza is very unique and they have to write down this experience and they have to write down their own stories. And sometimes he would really pressure them hard to do that. He never gave up on his students. He taught thousands of students throughout his career in teaching in Gaza before he was murdered by Israel. So over the years, I became his close friend. But it started at the university. I took 2 courses with him, and he was very tough, and many students avoided him because of his very particular style of teaching. And he would give us a lot of homework, and he expected us to be on top of things and study really hard to pass his exams. He wasn't easy with the grades. Like that's why some students didn't like his style of teaching. But he described that as tough love, and he wanted his students to understand the reason he was doing that. It was for their own sake, so that they become, as you said, the best version of themselves. He trained thousands of young people at the university and beyond, giving them free courses on creative writing and narrative and feature writing and social media and diplomacy and politics and culture and literature. Some of his lectures are available online, and he never charged students for these courses because he had a mission. It wasn't about money. He wanted to create an army of writers out of Gaza, and he did. He co-founded We Are Not Numbers, which is still going on, where he trained also hundreds of people, hundreds of young people in Gaza on creative writing. And these people have been writing back out of Gaza, writing their own stories. And again, he saw in writing as a form of resistance, cultural resistance. And that's why he chose the title Gaza Writes Back for his first edited book. It's like the Empire Writes Back. And writing back was very important in the face of Israeli erosion and propaganda. He translated the Israel Project, which was a secret document that taught Israeli spokespeople how to speak to Western media. He translated that document into Arabic, so he understood Israel's propaganda. And he was very smart, using literature and language and jokes and cultural references and food to deliver his message. And for this exact reason, Israel murdered him. Now I am on a speaking tour promoting his book, but also the work of the Quakers in Palestine. We've published Displaced in Gaza, which I see as a continuation of Rifat's legacy of storytelling. It has the stories of 27 Palestinians who endured the Gaza genocide and survived for now. But to go back to Rifat's book and his poem, If I Must Die, which is now painted in very beautiful mural, a few steps from here on the International Wall in Belfast. He wrote this poem in 2011, and he dedicated it to his daughter, Shayma, who was killed by an Israeli airstrike along with her husband and child in April 2024, just a few months after Rifat was killed. But Rifat, after receiving threats from journalists and military people in Israel and politicians because of his activism on Twitter, writing back and debunking Israel's propaganda about the genocide and what was happening in Gaza, he felt that, and he actually received direct calls from the Israeli military. He received that his life was coming to an end.
What did those direct calls, what were they saying to him in those calls?
We know where you are and we will get you.
And telling him.
So yeah, this is the call he received.
Yeah,
of course, this is the call he received, and following which he left the shelter he was at with his kids and wife, and he went to his sister's apartment. And soon after he got there, he was targeted and killed with his sister, brother, and 4 of his nephews and nieces. So he felt that his life was coming to an end. Rifat was very prophetic in many different situations. And he said many things that happened later in life. And he even has tweets about people and their politics that people still quote up until now. Say, look, this is what Rifat said 2-3 years ago or 10 years ago. And he was right about this issue or that issue. So he felt that his life was threatened. And for this reason, I think he penned this poem that he wrote in 2011 in November to his X account in November 2023. And soon after, Israel targeted him and killed him. And the poem resonated with people because although it's very philosophical, very deep, it also has a very simple language.
Yeah.
It speaks of a child who flies kites as an act of resistance, an act of hope and love. And this is Rifat himself flying kites in his town of Shija'iyya in Gaza. He was very proud to be from Shija'iyya. He told everyone he met that he's from Shuja'iyya. And it speaks of someone who had to endure death. He never chose death. Rifat loved life. Rifat celebrated life. He lived life to the full, I would say, to the fullest. But again, this is the reality of the Palestinian people in Gaza, and this is the reality of Rifat himself. Death was imposed on him. And that's why he says, if I must die, then you must live. So the reader will come out after reading this poem with a message, with a task, that I need to do something to tell the story of Rifat, and the story of Gaza, and the story of Palestine. As I said, the poem was dedicated to his daughter. His daughter was killed. But it's the message, it's the mission of everyone that reads the poem, to take it and tell the story of Rifat, so that this story, this tale, brings about hope and change. So the death of Rifat becomes a reason for change, for the Palestinian people. Rifat was selfless. He supported his students in many different ways. He gave them books. He donated books for them, and he gave them money, and he dedicated his entire life to his students. And that's why his students continue his message. There are thousands of students he taught. Dozens of them now hold PhDs, and they're scattered all over the world, telling his story and the story of Gaza. He was Gaza's grand narrator per se, and he was very powerful, very smart, very articulate, and very intentional, telling, one last story out of Gaza before he was murdered.
You mentioned there about how he has sort of prophetic ability. Someone told me that the word prophet is derived from a Hebrew word, meaning someone who can, it was originally described like an intellectual, and very intelligent people seem to have an ability to predict the future because they have such a good understanding of the present that they can see what's coming.
Yeah.
And you said that about Rifat, that he predicted they would find a copy of Mein Kampf. Of course, they didn't. That was planted. And he also knew straight away that some of the stories coming out of October the 7th were nonsense. Like there was the stories about babies being burned in ovens, and he put out you said he had dark humor last night, and it reminded me of that tweet he put out where someone was going on about a baby being burnt in an oven, which was nonsense. And he said he put out a tweet saying, with or without baking powder.
Yeah. So Rifat had a very dark sense of humor, and this is how he talked to us, his friends and students. And I mean, the language he used wasn't surprising to me because I knew him, and I knew how he talked and how he responded. Basically, that was his way of saying, there is no evidence to this. This is propaganda, and no one should believe it. But again, people like Barry Weiss, American journalists, use this tweet to smear Rifat and stage a character assassination campaign against him that preceded his actual physical assassination. But again, this is how Rifat told his story, and I think no one is in a position to tell the people of Gaza how to speak after enduring a genocide. I remember interviewing Rifat for an article I wrote just 2-3 days before he was murdered. And he published some videos from the western part of Gaza City after Israeli forces temporarily withdrew. And Rifat was shocked by the graffiti in Hebrew that he saw, and he was asking people about the meaning. He was shocked by the amount of destruction he's seen in Gaza City. Huge destruction. And at the time, in November and early December 2023, that was a big thing. Like, Gaza wasn't leveled to the ground. So that was the initial stages of demolishing Gaza and leveling it to the ground. But again, for this exact reason, his ability to crack jokes. Many people would ask me about his fate when he would disappear for a few days. from social media, and then he would come back, and I sometimes would be able to reach out to him, and he would tell me to tell people that he's fine, but he cannot have access to the internet, or he will tweet very soon, and the situation is very bad, and he was caring for about 50 people of his extended family. So it wasn't easy for him, but despite this, he walked about 25,000 steps a day to tell a story, to write a single tweet. So it was very shocking, and there was an interview he gave to the Electronic Intifada, and this was one of the favorite websites of Rifat. He published with the Electronic Intifada, and he encouraged his students to do the same before and after the genocide started. He said, "I am an academic, and the toughest thing I have is an expo marker. But if Israelis invade our homes, I'm going to throw this expo marker at them as an act of resistance." So this is how he saw the story, and this is how he saw resistance. And he was very defiant, although he teared up. He couldn't hold his tears while he was talking because of the crazy bombardment campaign around him. You could tell in the background that it was relentless. But he wanted also to stay defiant and say no, and throw an expo marker at Israeli soldiers, even as he said, if it was the last thing I would be doing.
Yeah. I think that became almost as famous as his poem. It's kind of like the ultimate expression of the pen is mightier than the sword. If you say you're going to throw your pen at them when they come. You talked about the importance of storytelling and telling the Palestinian situation. Like the Zionists have, it's not a true story, but they have quite a powerful story. It's a story of people who were chased from their homeland thousands of years ago, persecuted for centuries, and then return triumphantly to their homeland. Obviously, there's elements of truth to all of that, but it leaves out so much context. It's ultimately not very truthful, but it's a powerful story. Do you think we have a similarly powerful story to tell what Palestinians go through? Do you think we do a good enough job of that, especially in the West?
I remember when we traveled to promote Gaza Rise Back, we got some positive feedback, and there was someone in the audience who said, in the past I always asked myself, where is the Palestinian film? Where is the Palestinian story? Where is the Palestinian novel? And when he saw Gaza Rise Back, he said this was the answer to my question. So Palestinian writers, narrators, intellectuals have been doing their best to tell their story in writings. I mean, if you go online, you find thousands of articles and stories, and Palestinian journalists have paid a heavy price, but 260 of them were killed by Israel while telling their stories, while conveying the plight of their people to the world. Just recently, Israel killed Al Jazeera Mubashir, Al Jazeera Live journalist Mohammed Boushah, and they continue to target journalists. I think the world wouldn't be able to, international journalists were not allowed into Gaza during the genocide. The world wouldn't be able to learn about the magnitude of Israel's atrocities and genocide in Gaza had it not been to Palestinian journalists on the ground who continue to tell the story, who can, even not just journalists, people like ordinary people. Palestinians have been subjected to injustice for so many years. So there's a natural inclination for anybody who experiences injustice or sees an airstrike or something happening to take their phones and talk about it. At the AFSC now, we have a traveling exhibition in collaboration with Visualizing Palestine titled Why We Record. So the inclination to record, why do we record? It's because we want to be a witness to what's happening to our people. We want to document that, and then we want this documentation to reach the world so that it could be used as an evidence against Israeli war criminals, but also to be used as a form of documentation that will hopefully bring about change. When people see these atrocities, they take to the streets. the reason many people took to the streets is because they saw footage coming out of Gaza. And it was exactly because Palestinian journalists and community journalists or just ordinary citizens were able to capture these atrocities and share them with the world.
Mm. Yeah, it still does sometimes when I reflect on it. It's still amazing that the genocide was allowed to continue for so long, even with that much documentation. Obviously, ordinary people cared about it, but our ruling class
absolutely
just didn't.
It's like if you look at the Nakba of 1948, much of that generation is gone today, and Palestinians were able to document some of these stories, but many of these stories have gone missing now because they died with their people. Like these Palestinians who survived the Nakba died, and many of them did not speak about their experiences. That's why it's very important that we speak about the experience of Palestinians during the genocide, and that's why we have the book Displaced in Gaza. Has 27 stories of people who survived the genocide, and as I said, there are like 2 million stories in Gaza now that we need to document. And here comes the role of an international solidarity too. It's not just on Palestinians, because Palestinians are busy surviving now. They're being starved, they're being bombed. Sometimes they do not have access that people have outside, publishers or even translating their stories into foreign languages. Some people do not speak English. Here comes international solidarity and actions that amplify these voices. We have them, they're coming out of Gaza, but we need to document them, preserve them, and publish and share them.
Yeah, I suppose the hope is like this all has a weight to it in the end. Like if you're saying, if the stories in the past disappeared, and also there's no real platform for Palestinians. We talk about like the Zionists.
Yeah, mainstream media has been very horrible. But also we have alternative media, we have social media. Rifat, and social media hasn't been perfect either, but there are ways. If there is a will, there is a way. Rifat was able to use Twitter very effectively. Although it's censored, but creating alternative media is very important. Websites that publish the Palestinian narrative, uncensored, unfiltered. We need more of this. We need a website everywhere, in every country, in every community, that tells the stories of people in Gaza. And this is the best form of solidarity that we could have today. Again, we shouldn't wait for mainstream media, because mainstream media has always been on the wrong side of history. If we look even at other causes, they do what governments ask them to do, or governments that give them the money, and they follow the same policy. But there are also spaces where we can, like podcasts today are big things, especially for young people, and it doesn't take much money to do a podcast.
No.
We can use podcasts instead of mainstream media. I haven't watched TV in like 15 years, maybe.
I don't have a TV.
Yeah, many people, mainstream media is dying in a way with, new technologies, and we have to get on the boat with new technologies and new platforms. Every other day we have a new platform coming out, and the way stories are told is changing, and the way people and young people perceive storytelling and consume media and stories is changing, and we have to adapt to that.
Yeah, you can largely bypass mainstream media to a large extent. And in fact, it's actually getting worse. I think the BBC is getting worse.
Yeah.
I saw something the other day that the Telegraph, I don't know if you heard of the Telegraph paper.
Yes, I did,
in Britain. And if you heard today, it's been mandated by their owner that the journalists there must support Israel.
Yeah.
He sent out an email saying these are the...
I mean, it's...
We talk about free speech, and then he said you have to support Israel.
It's not surprising to me, especially that they ran a story the other day about Med for a Human Rights Monitor, which is a human rights organization from Gaza that had a training to teach Palestinians on how to edit content on Wikipedia, because this content is often edited by pro-Israel people, and they write their own story and the way they see it. But the minute Palestinians said, no, we will do the same thing, they said, this is propaganda.
Yeah. Facts have a left-wing bias, facts have a Palestinian bias, basically.
Yeah.
So if you just tell the truth, like it's that thing that came out the other day about an Italian magazine.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
I did.
Put a picture of a settler harassing a Palestinian woman, and they said this is anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
But they're essentially saying reality is anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
If you take a photo, it's
reporting realities on the ground is not anti-Semitic, and I think it's also. I have a lot of connections with, especially Jewish Americans, and we work with many Jewish groups. It's Jewish value to oppose oppression.
Of course.
But we have the hijacking of Judaism by Zionism today, where anyone who's critical of Israel is accused of anti-Semitism. But I think also people no longer buy into these things.
Yeah. Jamie, the concept of anti-Semitism gets diminished, and it's still obviously a real thing.
Yeah.
But it's so abused at this point that it diminishes the whole concept, sadly.
It's like, death marches, for example, in Gaza. Palestinians were asked to walk towards the south, and they were targeted by airstrikes. There was a truck that carried hundreds of Palestinians, and 70 Palestinians were killed on the truck. And the use of, this term, according to people who support Israel, is anti-Semitic, because they think this concept of death marches is only exclusive to the Jewish experience during the Holocaust. But this is not true. What happened in Gaza was a death march too.
Yeah.
People were asked to walk, and they were promised safety if they go to the south from the north of Gaza. And what happened was the opposite. They saw bloodshed. They were targeted by the Israeli military. And they were not even allowed to look behind or look, under their feet. If their loved ones fall down, they were not able to pick them up. And there are many testimonies coming out of Gaza speak of, this experience that Palestinians had. But again, this is a continuation of the weaponization of anti-Semitism by pro-Israel groups.
I think you were saying a bit last night that just genocide is not a unique thing in the history of humanity. It's something that
happened to
recurs,
many groups and people, and every people have the right to speak about their genocide
in their own way. Yeah. Do you want to tell us a bit about your work then with the Quakers, the American Friends Service Committee?
So I learned about the Quakers from a Palestinian elder named Ahmed in 2013, 2012, because he received aid from the Quakers in 1948 in Gaza. So the history of Quakers go back to at least 1869 in Palestine, when the Quaker missionaries came to the West Bank and Ramallah, and they started the Friends School there, still working and functioning up until today. But in 1948, it was the Quakers who started Palestinian refugee camps in Gaza before UNRWA was established about 2 years later and took over these refugee camps. This is a very important piece of history many people are not aware of. So Ahmed Al-Hajj told me about the Quakers, and 2014, it was the Quakers, the FSC, in collaboration with Just Word Books, the publisher of Gaza Rice Bag, that brought me, Rafat and Rawan, our colleague and friend, to the US to promote Gaza Rice Bag. And the FSC has been, supporting divestment, also ethical investment, and bringing Palestinians to the US to talk about their experience. Ahmed Abartema, for example, the founder of the Great March of Return, was brought to the US, and he toured the US talking about the Great March of Return in Gaza. Rafat and I, in 2014, I went back again in 2022, 2023 to talk about another book that was edited by the AFSC staff at the time, Jihad Abu Salim and Jennifer and Mike, our colleagues. titled Light in Gaza, to which Rifat also contributed a chapter, and he talked about his life. He opened up for the first time, and he talked about his childhood and the fact he was shot as a teenager by Israeli soldiers in Shuja'iyya. His uncle was tortured to death in Israeli jails. His brother was killed, and his parents survived death. And the book, sold about 10,000 copies, and it was downloaded 65,000 times because people wanted to learn about the genocide in Gaza and Gaza after October 7. So the book envisioned the future of Gaza beyond siege, and soon after we had a genocide in Gaza. I contributed a chapter about travel restrictions. There were also chapters about artificial intelligence and the use of architecture in rebuilding Gaza, and many other themes, very important. And recently we also edited Displacing Gaza. We're working on another book now on people who sustained the community during the genocide. We have the Action Hour for Palestine every Friday, 12 Eastern, where about 150 to 200 people join. We give updates about the situation in Gaza. People can sign up. Go to our programs page, the Palestine Activism Program at the FSC, and sign up for the newsletter of the Action Hour so that they get the link and join. As I said, every Friday. We've been doing this every Friday since October 7 at 12 noon time, Eastern time in the US. And we have the apartheid-free communities pledge, similar to the apartheid-free zones here.
PDS, yeah.
And we have about 1,100 communities that sign into the pledge so far, and it's growing every day. So we try to employ and highlight storytelling in our work. We invite Palestinian speakers to talk. Last week we had Muhammad Shihada.
He's very good, isn't he?
Yeah. And we always bring speakers from Gaza itself, people who are in Gaza on the ground. It's important for us that we give the platform for Palestinians to speak, and especially Palestinians from Gaza today.
Yeah. And I think they kind of do everything. They're kind of organizing activism outside Gaza, and they're providing meals for people in Gaza as well.
On the ground, we have a team that provided more than 1 million hot meals to Palestinians in Gaza during the genocide. Our team has also been working on mental health, hygiene with women, working with farmers. These sectors are very important. Working on education. We have to continue this, legacy of working with Palestinians and amplifying Palestinian voices and focusing on education, because this is how we see the way for recovery. And this is, again, should be done by Palestinians themselves, the way they see it. We have worked on another initiative called Goals for Gaza. Our team in Gaza organized a football tournament, and there were solidarity marches, for example, all over the world. At the same time, we're doing the same thing this year. So anyone listening to this podcast who wants to get in touch and organize a solidarity march, they're welcome to reach out to me. Around the World Cup will be held in June this year. So we try, our best. The situation is very complex and catastrophic, and work on Palestine is not easy. It's surrounded by many risks and challenges, but it's nothing compared to what the Palestinian people have been enduring.
Yeah, we don't really have any excuses. Yeah. Just finishing up then. I mean, I got the impression last night when you're talking that you're optimistic about the future. You think that things will improve, that there will ultimately be justice.
Absolutely, I am always optimistic, because once we lose hope, we're gone. We cannot do anything, and we're not in a position where we could just feel hopeless, because there are people who count on our work, and our people back home count on us to tell their stories. And if you look at history, although Palestinians have endured a genocide, but Israel has been challenged today before the ICJ and the ICC, and their criminal genocide cases against them.
Mm-hmm.
Their leaders have been charged with genocide. The situation in Israel, the division, the rift, political division in Israel has been growing. There are many European countries that voiced their opposition to Israel's policies publicly. Spain has withdrawn its ambassador from Israel last week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it took us a genocide to get to this point, unfortunately, and also looking at the masses all over the world, the change and the perception of public opinion has been massive. And this will definitely lead to political change. That's why we're hopeful, seeing people who take to the streets. We need to amplify that there is no ceasefire in Gaza. People need to continue to take to the streets, amplify Palestinian voices and tell their stories until Palestinians have justice. And the reason we're hopeful is because Palestinians are not exception to history. Throughout history, there are many nations and peoples who have been wronged.
Mm-hmm.
And they emerge victorious, and the Palestinian people are no exception. We've seen this in Ireland, in South Africa, in Algeria, in Vietnam, and we're not the first and we will not be the last. Unfortunately, this is the reality of global politics today. We've seen how wars have been expanding, and many people lose their lives every day, and this is the reality of peace and war in the world. And it's again something imposed on us. We never wanted to be under occupation. This is something imposed on us, and we as a nation will also emerge to be victorious, and our day will come.
Yeah, I think even the more intelligent Zionists say, this is futile.
It's not sustainable.
Yeah, oppressed people will always resist, and people will instinctively recognize when they're being oppressed, and they won't tolerate it. So it's inevitable it'll be pushed back, and ultimately, if it continues, they'll ultimately win, I think. Yeah. But anyway, Yousef, thanks very much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
Drenched on the shores of the Mediterranean, I saw humanity drenched in salt. Face down, dead, eyes gouged. Hands up to the sky praying or trembling in fear, I couldn't tell. The sea, harsher than the heart of an Arab, dances, soaked with blood. Only the pupils wept, only the pupils. Quote, all the perfumes of Arabia will not grace the rot Israel breeds. And this is a line, this is a line from Shakespeare, all the perfumes of Arabia.
Mm-hmm.
That Rifat always used, and also his reference to Palestine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, thanks very much.
Mm.